but I think, if I'm not mistaken, a 10 CFM compressor is plenty enough.
A what?
A 10 CFM compressor.
A 10 CFM.
Yeah, you don't need anything major for this one. The next size up, you need a 25 CFM to run at optimal speeds.
Okay.
But this one you can just use, you know, a small. I'll even show you one over here, like what you can use for gas power.
Well, yeah, we need a portable.
Yeah.
It needs to be portable.
These compressors are fairly inexpensive, but that's plenty enough to run that machine, and you can probably even go a little bit smaller. This is probably a little bit more than 10 CFM. I think we run our whole shop on a 14 CFM, but we don't get optimal pressure out of the larger units.
Okay.
But it's plenty enough for the smaller units.
All right. Now this small unit is capable of doing what size tanks?
You can do as big a tanks as you want. The only thing is, you know, you're going to be running 10 gallons a minute. 10 to 15 if you bypass the separator, because I think this is a 13 gallon per minute pump if I'm not mistaken. But generally you're only going to do the lower 10% of the tank. And I'll show you a way to find out how much you're actually going to be doing and show you what the difference is in different levels of the tank.
Okay.
I'm just getting all our hoses on here because I'll start automatically draining stuff. And I think it'd be a good idea to have a little bit of water to put in so you can see the separation. Alright, now here's one of our fuel samplers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a sample of the fuel in the tank, just to see what we got before we even start, so you can kind of see what's in the bottom of tanks.
Okay.
Because this tank just sits here, we don't do anything special to it, we don't dump dirt in it or anything. We drop it down until it hits the bottom. I usually give it about a 5 or 6 count, so it's got plenty of time to fill up. Then we'll bring that up. Now that's the very bottom of the tank.
Yeah, it looks pretty messy.
Yeah. Now what you have here, you can't hardly even see through it. Looks like we got a lot of water here at the bottom. You can see an interface here,
yep.
Sort of kind of clear at the top. That's actually with fuel. So we got a good bit of water and sludge here in the bottom. There's probably a couple different layers there. It's not, we don't have a lot of light in here, so it's kind of hard to see. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dump this into my waste tank here. So now we're all set. One thing that we like to do, we don't like the pickup tube to be on the bottom when we start off. We want to pick up fresh, clean fuel.
Okay.
So I'm going to lift this guy up off the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and open up these valves. This guy's closed. Our drain valve is closed. we're just going to crack this valve and start pulling slowly to begin with because the pump is dry. So we don't want to run it full throttle. They'll take a little second for it to come up, and what we're going to do is just make sure that we've got fuel going through. So we're going to watch that sight tube that's down on this housing here.
Okay.
I can kind of hear the sound of that pump. You can see it's kind of slowing down. We're starting to pump fluid now.
Okay.
But I like to make sure that there's fluid coming through before I crank it up wide open. Got nice clean fuel up in the middle of the tank.
Okay.
So now I'm going to just crank this, open that valve all the way up. Now we're running full throttle. Now once I get that sight tube filled up, now I can see the difference of what I got. So I'm going to take my pickup tube and I'm going to find the lowest spot of this round tank.
Okay.
And then basically, you'll notice in a couple seconds, wait, I might be. So we're pumping all the way through now. This thing's slowed down a little bit. For some reason my regulator's down a little low. We like to run that at 40 psi.
That's the regulator, and you adjust that to 40 psi?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So we'll come back over here. See if I can get right where I need to be here. Now I didn't pick up a huge amount of water at the bottom of that tank, but we've got a good little area there in the bottom of that cap that we can't see. What I'm going to do, just so we can get a little bit more in there, I'm just kind of pouring it all over the place in there.
And this is processing how many gallons? 10 gallons a minute?
About 10 to 13 gallons a minute. So this tank's probably got 150 gallons in it. So it wouldn't take this very long to recycle this whole tank. But say like on a 10,000 gallon tank, you're just gonna, I can't do the time in my head,
Right.
but I mean you got approximately 600 gallons per hour. So if you wanted to do 10% of that tank, you'd have to be there a minimum of say an hour and a half.
Gotcha.
But a lot of people like to do a little bit more than the 10% just to make sure that, because you're not all over the bottom of the tank. So you're
Right.
going to be waiting on some residual to kind of slow down at the bottom of the tank, because what we're doing is we're creating kind of a current in the tank. So we're pulling on the bottom and putting the fuel back, clean fuel back in on top, so you get kind of a flow. And what we hope for is to get the stuff on the bottom of the tank moving towards the pickup tube. Now in some tanks you'll have different situations where you can hit different points and get done faster. But a lot of times you're going to come into a situation where you're only going to be able to get into one spot, and it's going to take a little bit longer. I'm trying to see what we got here. If you look here, I've got just a little bit of an interface. You can definitely see a color difference in the fuel
Yeah.
to the water. Now the water and the fuel have both been filtered. All that gunk and rusty looking bacteria, that all got caught in the bag filter here.
Okay.
And I'll go through that. So actually, we'll do that right now. What I'm gonna do is I want to suck this down just a little bit so that it's not packed up with fuel there, so you can see the actual filter and everything. We'll turn this guy off. Release that vacuum. My guys really tighten these things, but they don't really necessarily need to be tightened that much. Now, below this cap, there's a spring in there that holds that filter down. And basically, that's just so that we're making sure that that filter is seated nice and well on this baffle here.
Okay.
And that's just going to give tension on that spring. Basically, what we've got in here, this is on the one that you're getting, we've updated a little bit and we put a larger bag filter in there. So this is a 16-inch, which you'll have is a 24-inch, which got a lot more capacity, so that you don't have to change filters quite as often.
How often do you change them?
Basically, what we're looking at, you're going to go by this gauge. Now, usually when you start out running on this gauge, normally you're going to be at 0. If you're an above ground tank pulling fuel, you're generally going to be running about 5 inches of vacuum. When I say 5 inches of vacuum, we're looking at the black out here.
Okay.
So that's minus 5 psi basically. Well, actually that's minus 2.5. Our gauges go in inches of mercury. 30 inches is the maximum vacuum possible. These machines, the maximum vacuum that these pumps will pull is about 21 to 20 inches of vacuum. Generally, I recommend the filter, regardless, to be replaced on anything, whether it's above ground or underground, at 16 to 18 inches of vacuum.
Okay.
The reason for that being, you may save, you may get an extra dollar's worth out of that filter, but you're probably losing an extra 2 to 3 gallons a minute because the way the air pump works, it's actually being slowed down.
Okay.
So in between, I would say 14 and 16 inches of vacuum would be a good time to change the filter, because if you go beyond that point, you're just slowing yourself down so far, and the filters are $4.50 a piece. It's pretty inexpensive to replace the filter and get out of there quicker.
Right.
We'll go ahead and,
How many filters come with the system?
I'll have to find out and see what was ordered.
Okay.
Generally, people usually buy a case of 100, but everybody buys something a little bit different.
I got you.
It just depends on, whatever he's talked to you guys about. And I didn't even know that this machine was sold until this morning, and then I'd already forgot about it by the time you came in. We generally, we send a lot out. We don't have a lot of people coming to pick them up.
Okay.
So putting this guy on, it's not too bad. And actually, they're better now than they used to be. This is an older unit. It's got its quirks. We've made it a little bit better. This is one of the quirks that I can't get away from. You start out with this one and make sure this washer is up above the cap. And now that's not going to be as difficult on that unit because you don't have to worry about this being in the way because the filter is actually up above that.
Okay.
Put that guy back on. And I'll show you, we'll open this guy up just to open it up. let me go. Maybe this one.